Hey everyone, welcome back. I want to go over this really strange article about cybersecurity and the delegation from the current president of the United States, which is Trump, and shifting a lot of the cybersecurity roles down to the state and local governments. And that's a little confusing because all this time we've always had a structure from federal, state to city, and any kind of major breach, any type of centralized information on how to prevent cybersecurity attacks always came from the federal side, CISA being one of them. And so we have this whole dilemma of why is Trump, the president, getting rid of all these roles from CISA, which he's been cutting thousands and thousands of roles. And then, in the later article, we hear that they're being reinstated, but they're being reinstated with no jobs, meaning they're on leave. So they're still getting paid to not do anything. And a lot of people are sitting there, twiddling their fingers and trying to figure out like what's the next steps, right? Apparently, what I understood from what I've been researching is that, even though you were once working at a agency and you had to be let go, your ID is already done, right? Your account is disabled or probably even removed or whatever it is. They have to go through the same procedures, even though they were just let go yesterday and they got reinstated today. I'm just saying, hypothetically, they have to go through the whole onboarding process. New employee ID, new physical IDs, new regaining access back to whatever facilities that they need to go to. So all that has to come into play. So I don't know the logistics and how all that will, affect the timeline of when they actually start doing work, because they are getting paid at this point. So in relations to all that, I want to bring this up because this was like a shocker to me. I read this as of today at 3:27 p.m., right? Trump administration begins shifting cyber attack response to the states. So right now it's federal, like I just said. Preparation for hacks, including U.S. adversaries, should be handled largely at the local level, executive order says. Now, I'm trying to figure out why, and I have my own conclusion as to why this is happening, right? So the one main reason why I figured Trump is trying to, eliminate the federal side of the cybersecurity is because of funding, right? Because why have all this money go into the federal government to create this major centralized cybersecurity agency, and then at the same time have the federal government still provide dollars to the state and local governments like the city? It's kind of like you're spending one group and then you're still providing the money to this state and local government like the city agencies to fund their own cybersecurity. So it's kind of like a double whammy, right? So if they got rid of the federal side, but just fund the money to the state and local cities, they could do whatever they want with their own cybersecurity infrastructure or, personnel's or talent that they're trying to hire. That's my opinion. I think that's what I'm gathering from all of this, because it just sort of like I'm putting the pieces together. I can't vouch that that's accurate 100% at least, but that's my opinion. So let's go over the exact details of what this article is stating right now. So right here, the Trump administration wants state and local government to play a bigger role in protecting water utilities, ports, and other critical infrastructure from cyber attacks. What I want to mention is that I've worked for the city for many years, and I'm actually still part of the government, agencies. The one thing I want to point out is that it's not like the state and local cities are not protecting themselves with cybersecurity talent. It's not like they're relying everything on the federal government to do this for them. There's no way that that's ever happening. It's a little confusing if you're not in the government side of things. So, from a state and local government perspective, which is the city agencies, they do have their own talent. They do have their own employees. They outsource their consulting for certain work as well. So they have their firewall admin, they have their, proxy admins, they have their red team, they have their blue team, their SOC team, and all that great stuff. All that, one big umbrella, and they have their CISOs and they have their middle management as well. So, so it's starting to kind of making sense that, if they get rid of the federal side, it's not like the federal agencies are assigning individuals to these localized government places like the state and the city. That's not what that is, right? Because it's just another source of resource for those state and city agencies to reach out to the federal government for assistance, for guidance, for, educational, because if you reach out to CISA, you reach out FBI whenever there's an issue. So I'm not surprised that's probably one of the cuts that they want to do is from the federal side. Remove all that, let the state and the local city agencies deal with everything on their own, which is, there is some downside to that, and I'll get to it in a little bit. In an executive order signed on Tuesday, Trump directed White House senior security advisors to put this plan together and shift all that responsibility to the state and local city agencies. And when I say local city agencies, that comprises of a lot, right? You have your legal law agencies, you have your park agencies, you have your, the more common ones would be like sanitation, and you have your housing, right? So, and schools, right? DOE is also one of them, Department of Education, on a city level, not at the federal level, and also at the state level. So there's 3 tiers of that, but you get the drift. And then of course there's HR for overseeing a lot of that, and there's payroll, finance agencies that oversees a lot of them. So each one of them deal with a lot of sensitive information in their own respectful ways, right? DOE would have to deal with children's information. Finance will have to deal with every employee of the city agency. And sanitation has obviously, their just normal payroll, people who are on staff, and any other information they have on their employees, social security numbers, any PII, PHI stuff. So obviously there is a lot of information that could be compromised at this level. Federal policy must rightly recognize that preparedness is most effectively owned and managed by the state and local and even individual levels, supported by competent, accessible, and efficient federal government, he said. A lot of push to this, and I still feel after reading this article that is the reason why, right? Because if the federal or if the Trump administration is wanting to save money, supposedly cut budget, then having redundant cybersecurity, it's almost like a security in layers, right? You have your federal government that can help you protect you, and then you have your own staff and whoever to protect, all the data or information that you have sitting on either the cloud or on-prem, right? Okay. Trump also called for a review of several executive orders and actions from the Biden administration, including those that establish a whole of government approach in managing cyber risk to critical infrastructure. So critical infrastructure, there's also like an agency like a DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection. They deal a lot with the water system, right? And then there's other agencies that deal with, I know sanitation also, because you may think that, Department of Sanitation only goes around picking up garbage. When it gets to the facility where they dump this garbage, yeah, it's like a whole processing plant, and there's a lot of, industrial machines that they have to work with. So, and imagine that if it got compromised or it got, impacted by any type of cyber, then everyone would just have garbage laying around and no one's picking it up. Just saying. I don't know. Of course, there's a lot of different scenarios and different reasons why the cybersecurity is a concern for every single agency, state and local governments, which is, across the board. This is not just affecting in New York. So one of the key things here is that, okay, New York has this OTI, which I was a part of, right? I went and I attended this as well, this whole academy. So what is OTI, right? OTI is like the cyber command for all of New York City. They ingest a lot of the data from a lot of smaller agencies that can't really prosper with their cybersecurity footprint because either they don't have enough funding or they're not that large and it just doesn't justify it, right? So that's when OTI steps in and helps out. And of course, we also have NYPD. That's a really large agency and they have their own staff and whatnot. I do have people that I know as, close friends, work at all these different levels of agencies. That being said, this OTI is definitely in New York, has a lot of funding, right? They're able to have a stance and they're able to, help the overall New York City and the different agencies. But what this article is also saying is that not every state has that ability. Not every agency in other states have this type of funding, have this type of talent available, because in New York, supposedly it's like a gold mine for more talent, more people, because it's so dense. And of course, other states are not as fortunate. And that's one thing that I gathered from this article as well. So if we continue here, the order comes a week after the Department of Homeland Security cut about half of the federal funding, or $10 million, to the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, which shares threat intelligence among state-level cyber agencies and staff, which is, the whole cutting of a percentage from the CISA federal agency. A lot of them were cybersecurity professionals, whether they were consultants or full-time employees from CISA. That affected both the federal government side and the private sector, because a lot of these agencies do outsource some of their talents. I shouldn't say all, but some of their talents out to consulting companies, which was privately owned. So that would be, positions that you could possibly go on LinkedIn and apply, and then, it's like a private organization, but they may have a contract with a government agency. Just putting that out there. A spokeswoman for the Center of Internet Security, a nonprofit that manages the center, said the cuts will leave state government exposed to nation-state threats. Yes, I do agree to that, and I'll explain in a little bit. These jurisdictions are on the front line of supporting much of the nation's critical infrastructure, and they rely on the MS Isaac for the vital resources to monitor and avert cyber threats that arise daily, she said. If these fundings are going away, right, it's going to be hard for some of these smaller places or even the larger that have staff. But, supposedly the federal side was focused on all of this, right? They have their overall concept of how to protect the critical infrastructures, helping and assisting the state and local agencies, local government. But when you start telling, a child to just go out and figure things out on your own without any guidance, right? Because the federal side apparently had a lot of guidance, right? A lot of documentation, a lot of training and guidance on how to do certain things. Not saying that the state and local cities are not able to do that, but it was a voice that had authority. There was no authority from the federal side, and each state or city had, an idea of how to target or do something. I honestly feel like it would just be all over the place. Like no one will have any set of rules or guidance or supposedly any type of structure or policy to go by. And everyone would just be randomly all over the place and doing their own thing, right? No structure whatsoever. So that's how I feel that would affect if the federal agencies that oversee cybersecurity goes away. That's all under my own observation and opinion. Of course, if you guys feel otherwise, please comment below. I would love to hear what your thoughts on that would be. Right now, the U.S. adversaries have stepped up hacking operations against state and local government and critical infrastructure companies in the recent years. So they're saying a lot of people sees the weakness or not the weakness, but they are attempting to try to compromise the U.S. in general. All these critical infrastructure, the water line, gas line, electricity, whatever you name it, right? So obviously that's always going to be out there. And of course, here it says hackers linked to China in particular have burrowed deep into the digital plumbing of telecom, water, power, and key sectors across the U.S. And the former director of Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, which is CISA. So what they're saying here is oh yeah, China, they're already sitting there waiting for something to just explode one day. Meaning what they're saying here is that everything already has been compromised. It's a matter of time, right? It's not like China's still trying to figure out doing reconnaissance work. They said they're past that already. They're not even at the reconnaissance stage anymore. They're actually inside, but they just haven't done anything yet. At least that's a huge claim. And that's what I gather from reading this particular little paragraph. But, it's only time can tell. No one would know for sure or for a fact. And it has to be proven, right? How do you know that it's specifically to China right now? Of course, they'll bring up a lot of evidence that you have to, right? There's a lot of things that you have to prove in order to make bold claims like this. So what we are able to find at CISA was just the tip of the iceberg. She said, all right, so she actually said, these little things that we found, that's not even like the big part of it. This is just like, we found a little icing on the cake. But, if you dive deeper into it, you start seeing all the ingredients and how it's made and all that. But yeah, I mean, people like CISA investigate these things, right? They reverse engineer a lot of these things, and with rightful, they would have to, because that's the only way you can actually see what's legitimately supposed to be there and what's not. I don't feel without the proper funding, state and local city agencies wouldn't be able to do that type of work. And I'm not saying that because, they're not capable. I'm just saying that because when you start working, going against these, like, daily attacks, if you ever been in a SOC position, you're getting thousands and thousands of false positive. You have to validate their false positives. And then you have to, like, kind of, your daily operational stuff is like day to day breaking, fixing, putting out fires. So you don't have the type of resources to always, investigate further, right? A lot of people just put band-aids against, things that are broken for the day, opposed to like going through the proper channels because it takes longer. It takes more time, it takes more resources, it takes more probably people power to do all this, right? So it's probably easier sometimes to just be like, okay, we'll just put a little Band-Aid here and we can, operation as normal. There's a lot of factors that would have to be considered, but to cut out the entire federal agencies that protect our critical infrastructure all at one time, yeah, that's a hard blow. Right. So let's keep on going. China has shifted cyber tactics, and from a data gathering and espionage target to disruption of everyday services, including water utility in Hawaii, a port in Houston, and a U.S. oil processing plant. Beijing has constantly denied involvement in cyber attack. I think it's important to understand how serious, urgent, and different the threat has evolved into, she said. Keep on going. Some populous, well-resourced cities have already built facilities and managing hack. In January 2015, New York City started Cyber Command to coordinate security efforts and incident response among the city's more than 100 agencies. Then Mayor Bill de Blasio, a Democrat, authorized the command in 2017. So I want to bring this up. So the interesting part is, in this time frame, 2015, I was hired into the city at 2016 because of this initiative. They wanted to build out this entire, every city agency had cybersecurity professionals to oversee and protect their infrastructure, their data, and everything else, right? I worked hand in hand with Cyber Command because they were the facilitator. They were our local city, incident command. If we had an incident, we consult with them, or they reach out to us. They actually held centrally, a lot of the tools that we would use. So it was a joint effort, and that allowed us to collaborate to make sure that we were protecting everything the best we can, and not keeping everything or everyone's independently or siloed, right? So if there was something that happened, everyone was aware, and we put full effort into making sure we remediate whatever situation was arising. So that made total sense. I was there from 2016 to 2022, I believe. Going further, that was when New York City took ownership of the prom, put his arm around it, and that's what I see in Trump's executive order, said Gustavo Rodriguez, chief executive of cybersecurity company Digital First Responder. Rodriguez helped create New York City Cyber Command when he was a lieutenant in the NYPD, New York City, Police Department Intelligence Bureau. The NYC Cyber Command is part of the city's Office of Technology and Innovation, which is OTI for short, budget for fiscal year 2026 of $743 million. Such resources are far beyond the capabilities of most cities, many of which already struggle to fund effective cybersecurity programs. And they are speaking outside of New York City. New York City apparently has that much money to spend on cybersecurity, but not every other state or city has that luxury to have that much cash come in and also fund this type of resources, right? Even cities of similar size, such as Los Angeles, have shifted initial plans for Cyber Command to to looser public-private partnership or state organizations. States including Texas, Maryland, and Virginia have often leaned on National Guard cyber units to help respond to serious hacks. So a clear sign, right? Texas, Maryland, Virginia don't have those type of resources or funding, so they had to rely on federal side to help remediate a situation. So last paragraph right here, Rodriguez said that managing cyber risk doesn't always mean spending hundreds of millions of dollars. Even getting head of department in the room with local federal bureau of investigation contacts to share information can be beneficial and can be done without the mega bucks of a metropolis like New York. Human-to-human partnership is free. That's coffee and bagels, he said. So pretty much this last paragraph is just summing up that, knowledge transfer, just sharing information can actually prevent, certain major situations from happening, which is really, it makes sense, right? That's how everyone gets educated and you're fully aware of a situation. That's how we all started learning about phishing emails, right? Don't click on this. Make sure you analyze this. No one had to, spend millions of dollars to figure that out. You just kind of had to sit with someone who probably has looked into it or experienced it, and they inform you. And then from that point on, you're more aware and you're making sure that you don't do the wrong thing, right? So that's pretty much it. I felt like this was a great article to share because it affects everyone, right? Anyone who's in cybersecurity, because right now it's like, wow, so what does that mean? Does that mean the state and the city is going to be looking for more talent? Possibly. Are they going to be cutting people from the federal side that already is doing cybersecurity? They've already done that. So are you competing with the federal employees who used to work and looking for a job now and possibly the state and city side? Yes. So again, it's a full circle. It may or may not happen for the full extent. Maybe they'll get reinstated and everyone starts doing the same concept. But, this is an executive order, and apparently they're forcing all the cybersecurity to be handled on a more localized level. So I want to thank you guys for being here. Please hit that like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys again really soon. Take care.